So let me have some class participation. Anybody, raise your hand. What's the first one? Okay, yes, what's your name again? Nicole, is that it?
Yes.
I know we have a Nicole here, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, production method.
Production method, okay. Okay, behind, Nicole,
Brianna.
Brianna, okay, you're the other Brianna. Are you Adams last
Yes,
name? Okay, please.
Expenditure.
Expenditure method, very good. And how about different person? Okay, Jared,
Value added method.
I'm sorry?
Value added method.
Value added method. Okay, what about Tyler? Go ahead.
Income method.
Sorry?
Income method.
Income method. Very good. So far, we have sort of talked about production method. That was the first example about the orchard deal with the apples, banana, and the, what was the other one? Sheep. Yeah. Expenditure method, we talked about it. C plus I plus G plus NF. This is a famous line that final exam I have to check students to see they make sure they're not tattooing into their skin, you know. 'Cause that's a good one to tattoo if you want to cheat. I should not give you any suggestion that. Anyway, so consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus net export. Now you will need to know the details of it, okay, like what we went over the other day. Consumption can be broken down into, remember we talked about durable goods, non-durable goods, services, okay? And then investment, you have to know what goes into it. Business fixed investment, residential investment, as well as inventory. So all this is in your book. Remember this diagram we looked at the other day? Yeah, I think that's the one, right? So you need to also know what goes into the subcategories into each of the big four components. Then of course we have government expenditure, government purchases. Like if the government spend money on education, on building hospitals, on building highway, like public goods, so that goes into that as well. Okay, the government budget. The government pay the military or they spend money building up the defense system, that is also government purchases or expenditure. Net exports, I think we talked about it. Okay, the value added method, we had also given one example. You need to remember that you would take the revenue minus the cost of the input of the previous process on the upstream, coming down upstream all the way down to downstream. And finally, the most bottom of the downstream company is the one that the final user or consumer like you and me, retail store, go in, walk in and buy a loaf of bread. So example would be like Food Lion. Okay, so on the test, we'll ask you this kind of question. So you need to know it very detailed. You need to know some example. You need to know that definition very well. What is the definition? Anybody remember? The definition includes market value. Okay, so if it is house, wives, working, we don't count that. Yes, Kai? Miss Kai? No? Oh, you were going to give answer. Okay, so that, what else? We talk about market value, and then we talk about produced, has to be produced. It can be something used, like you buy a used car, used house, you know, used book. So you see all these books you buy that you save money, they don't go into GDP because they work when it was brand new, right? So keep that in mind. So there are a few things I should point out because I can't like rush over it towards the end, but they are important. Let's go back to it a little bit. Okay. And then within the country, it's produced within the country. I think you understand that one. Within a given period, and as I said, a lot of time it's annually. And the other day, Jake, you gave the number 18 trillions, which is pretty close. For the dollars for the US GDP. Let's see what else. So now I want to go back to one particular example. I think that's where we stop. So let's look this up. Where's the definition? I think it's somewhere here. Investment. Okay, right here. There were actually two things I want to point it out before I move on to the material. Okay, the investment part. So I think the last thing I said the other day, sort of rushing through, is remember this GDP, the investment I component of the GDP, does not include any stocks and bonds. One of the reasons is because everybody knows stock market, right? The prices change very frequently. Like 9 o'clock in the morning when the market opened, the share for the price for the Apple computer might be, who knows, like $700 per share. And then by noon, it might drop down to $600. So that is changing so much. There's so much dynamics going on in the stock market. There's no way we could capture it and count it towards GDP. So therefore, we don't count it. So same thing as bonds. Although price of bonds is a little bit more stable usually. So remember that. If you ask a question like that, you should know on the test. Okay, there's one other part that I would like for you to actually look at your book. I think this is the one right here. The government purchases does not include transfer payment. And I gave you that definition. If you have it, would somebody read that definition back to us? If you have it? Yes?
Any payment from the government to the eligible people, for
body?
people without expecting any service in return.
Okay. So there is a reference here in your book. Let's look it up. Let's see if you could find it. Tell me what page you can find it. 51. Okay, let's go for it. 51 around somewhere in the middle, right? Who say 51? Would you like to read it? It's under government purchases somewhere in the middle there. Go ahead and read it.
Government purchases do not include transfer payments, which are payments made for the government in return for which no current goods or services are received.
Okay. I would add a little bit more to it. That the payment made by the government to the people who are eligible for it. For example, like if you're unemployed, you receive unemployment compensation from the government. You can't just tell them, hello, I'm unemployed. You have to prove yourself. You have to be actively looking for the job in the last 4 weeks in order to be counted. You have to be, you have to start looking, you have to look up a newspaper advertisement, like go for an interview, actively seeking, and not just be a couch potato at home and say, well, yeah, I would like to receive employment compensation, but have you make any efforts in the last 4 weeks? So next week, when we talk about unemployment, that would be the definitions for it. You have to be actively looking for a job in the last 4 weeks. So that's transfer payment. Example, unemployment compensation, your Social Security, your Medicare, your Medicaid. So remember I mentioned that Medicare would be like you have to be over 65 years old. So your grandma, grandpa, your mom and dad, if they're over 65, eligible. And meaning that the government will cover a big part of it. And if you're under Medicaid, CAID, then you have to be, your household income has to be below certain poverty level in order to be eligible. Now, there are people who are qualified for both simultaneously. Medicare, they're over 65, and yet they are below poverty income, so they are qualified for both. So, but the government give it to them for free if they're eligible, if they can prove themselves to be in that situation, without asking them to return any services. Now, there is some scholarship, I'm not sure if you have those, if they give it to you because it's based on your good GPA, or because you're an athlete, you got athlete scholarship, that's one of the example here. But if you're asked to come back and do service, For example, I know some scholarship are bonded. Not sure about this country, but in other countries are bonded, meaning that if the government pay for your 4 years of study, then when you finish a degree, you have to come back and work for the government for 4 years, 5 years. Yes, question?
I don't know if North Carolina still does it, but they used to have something like that for teachers. If
Oh, really?
they spent so many years teaching in North Carolina, they would pay for their teaching degree.
Mm-hmm. They have to teach in North Carolina, or
Yeah.
there's no restriction?
Within North
They have
Carolina.
to. Okay.
It's a state.
Yes,
And then they do that within this county, from what I've heard, like. with the
they
team.
have it for the within the county as
Yeah,
well.
within
Oh,
counties.
okay, for teachers, right? Okay. I think that's fair. You know, you give back to the community, sort of. You give back to your state. You know, don't betray us. Goodbye. You know, here I come, Montana. Yeah, no. Okay. Does not include interest paid on government debt. I kind of explained this very quickly the other day. For example, if you owe IRS money, how many? Never mind. Don't raise your hand. I'm so afraid to ask this question. We're gonna report on you. Okay, so if you owe the IRS money and let's say it's about 2,000, that's a lot of money. So you won't be able to pay back right away, and what do they always work out something, so we can help you. We can help you. So we'll come out with a payment plan. So you only have to pay $20 per month for the rest of your 20 years or whatever, you know, and then they charge interest. Yes? Yeah, they charge interest. So the interest payment that they earn from such a case like this, we won't count it towards GDP because there's really no services involved. This is kind of like debt, you know. Even though that might be a big amount there. Okay. Now I want to come back to stretch your definition or understanding for this equation. The second one, GDP equal to C plus I plus T plus NX. So let's look at one example. In this example, what we want to look at is we want to compare two methods, production method and the expenditure method, and the conclusion will be the same. We get the same number. For example, if there's an economy that produces only 1 million cars, and the value of the car is 15,000 each. You not know what kind of car. It's kind of cheap, isn't it? Now, if you use production method, it's very easy, straightforward. Take 1 million times 15,000, you get 15 billion. Everybody okay with that? Let's do a little bit of numbers here. Because sometimes students have problems with that. On the day of the test, which is coming Monday, if you bring your calculator, you will get 1 extra point. Not your cell phone calculator, but a traditional handheld calculator. I'll give you 1 extra point. Okay, so all right. So if you have, in English, if you have 3 zeros, we call this 1,000. How many zeros are there in a minute?
Eggs.
Very good. How many are there in a billion?
9.
How many are there in the trillion? Very good. Three times 4, 12. Okay, I say that to help you with this, because in this case, you know that 1 million has, how many zeros? 6. So you got 3 zeros there, so 6 plus 3, you got 9. 9 zeros would be 15 billion. Although if you use a calculator, you see a lot of zeros. You know, we have already converted into English for you. So let's use the expenditure method, okay? So in the expenditure method, we say, out of the 1 million cars, do not get the two confused. One is a unit of car, the other one is a value of a car. Identical, 15,000 each. So 700K of them sold to consumer, and that goes into your C, okay? 700,000, and that is a unit times the unit price, so you get 10.5 billion. I'm not gonna go over that zero because we already done that. 200,000 sold to business, so that will be your I. that's your business fixed investment. 200,000 is a unit times the unit cost, you got 3 billion. Next, only 50,000 are sold to the government. So you got 50,000 times 15,000. So again, don't get the two mixed up. One is the P, the other one is the Q quantity. So you got 0.75 billion. Lastly, 25,000 of them are being exported. There is no import, so your NX is essentially your X, no M there. 25,000 and 15,000 got there. Okay, I would like for you to do a quick calculation with your head if you want, in your head, or you can use calculator if you want. What's missing? We didn't use up all of them.
75,000.
So if you add up this number, 700K, 200K, 50K, 25K, what do you have? $975,000. So what's the difference between 1 million and 975,000?
25,000.
I'm sorry?
25,000.
25,000, very good, you're right. So in other words, we have 25,000 that goes into what we call inventory, okay, right here. So 975,000, so there's a remaining of 25,000, the difference between a million and that number. So that is actually goes into your I, remember that? Go back to your page 50, right? Your investment has 3 categories, subcategories. One is business fixed investment, the second one is residential investment, the last one is inventory, right? So that goes into your I as well. So you got 0.375 million, so now finally you add all together, because we ask questions like that on the test. Okay, 10.5 goes there, and your I has 2 parts. One is 0.375, which is your inventory. 3 is from previous screen. Okay, let's go back. That one right there, okay? And then the other 2 are the same, the G and the NX. So you got the G and the NX, so you add up to be the same, 15 billion. So what this is saying is no matter what method you use, production method or expenditure method, it should come out to be the same. So what you have to be careful is, the kind of questions that I would ask you would be like, that clear definition of the GDP, what to include and what to exclude. And then for each of the components using the GDP method, you have to know the subcategories as well. Okay, the last method is income method. We haven't talked about it at all. If you use an income method, then there are only 2 categories. One is labor income, the second one is capital income. Labor income is very straightforward, salaries of workers. If you're self-employed, that counts, dude, okay? So that's 75% of the GDP. So the big chunk of it comes from labor income. What are they? Wages, salaries, income of a self-employed goes into that category. It's called labor income. What about the other 25%? That's your capital income. And capital income will be something like interest payment that you receive from your investment, the rent that you receive if you have properties, profits, and the last thing is royalties. What is royalties? Anybody? Does everybody know what is royalties? Okay, what kind of things have royalties? Give me an example. Evan, you know any?
Is it like if I own a product and I let other people sell it and they give me a royalty?
Yeah, product, specifically books, for example. You got royalties for books.
The person who wrote the book?
Right, the original writer, the authors, right? What about music CD, right? If you buy Michael Jackson CD, it now goes to the estate of Michael Jackson. So he gets the royalties. I get a little bit of royalties from this book, not the one that you hold in here, because there's actually an Asian edition of it that I'm actually 1/4 of the authors. So I get some chunk out of that. as well. But again, not this one because I feel like it's a conflict of interest to sell my book to my student. So, and then artwork as well. Picasso, Monet, all these like famous art, Mona Lisa, yeah, you got royalties there as well. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is comparison of three methods, except for the value added. So production method, you look at everything, but you look at the final goods and services, not the intermediate goods. Expenditure method, Z plus I plus G plus NX. You could see that consumption contributes the majority of it, big part of it. It looks like it's more than 50%. I want to say about 60%, maybe 65%. Labor income, yeah, it has to be because this is 75 years, so yeah. Less than 75, so roughly about 65, maybe 60. So labor income methods, you have big chunk of it, 75% goes to labor income and 25% goes to capital income. Okay, next I want to introduce a very important concept in macroeconomics, which you will see it throughout the rest of the semester, or at least the next 2 chapters at least. That is the concept of real versus nominal value. Okay, so you want to look at the real GDP versus nominal GDP. So in order to demonstrate this concept, let's look at our example. So in this example, we're looking at 2 years of calculating the GDP, and we look at 2 products. Italian food. So we got pizza, and we also have what you pronounce it calzones. I heard some people pronounce it calzone, Italian. I don't know. Any Italian here? So, but most students like to pronounce it calzone, so I'll just stick with calzone. Okay, so what it is 2009. So you're given the P times Q. Remember that equation I gave you before, right? So in this case, you have PI, QI equals to P1, Q1 plus P2, Q2. So this will be your pizza. Your product 1 is pizza, the product 2 is your calzones. And that will be from 1 to 2. Okay? So there it is. We say in 2009, let's calculate the GDP in an economy in which you only produce 2 things. Okay, so that's very simple. You just take the unit price of the pizza times the quantity of pizza. So if you have your calculator, go ahead and do it and tell me what's the first number. And then here you take 15 times 5. I lay out the working for you. This is called a working. So in your homework problem, if I ask you any numerical question, I would like to see this working like that. Write out everything, because if you give me the magic answer and say, oh yeah, 335, I say, well, how did you get it? You have to show your working. Because a lot of the time, when I go back and look at this, I say, oh yeah, all these numbers are correct. But you didn't get the last number correct, because you punch in the wrong number on the calculator or whatever, But then if your working is correct, that shows that you understand. So you get some partial credit, not full credit, but partial credit there. Okay, so 10 times 10 plus 15 times 5. So what's that number?
7,500.
700?
7,500.
7,500, okay. Is that correct? That seems to be very large.
I got 175.
Yeah.
175, okay, what's 10 times 10 is 100. So this is 5 times 15, that's 75. Okay, I'll take 175. Now, then 5 years later, which is 2013, and we double the quantity of pizza. So we got 20 instead of 10. Okay, so you see, sometimes using calculator could also make a slight mistake there, okay? Maybe extra 0 or something. So the calzones also, we double it 5 years later. So now we got 30. And the price has gone up as well, $6, and this is 12. So let's do that 2013 calculation, 20 times 12 plus 30 times 6.
420.
420? Okay, very good. So let's take 420. 2009. Let's say 420 divided by the other number was 175, right? Tell me what you got.
2.4.
I'm sorry?
2.4.
2.4, and who say that? Is that Nick? Okay. 2.4. All right. So what I want to ask you this question, take a look. Take a look at the overall picture. We say that, oh, the output has doubled. See, we double the quantity of pizza, we double the quantities of calzone. But the GDP has actually gone up by more than 2.4 times. And we know that's one of the reasons because, yeah, the price has also gone up. We got such a thing called inflation. So we say, well, GDP might overstate economic growth because economic growth is exactly 2, GDP is more than that. So how do we correct that? So this is one of the very important lessons in macroeconomics, that there's such a thing called inflation. Inflation is very real. When you drive up to the gas pump, what was it today? I haven't gone to gas station yet in the last few days. So what was it? What's today's gas price?
It's 208.
Okay, I'll take that, $2.08. So tomorrow you drive by, what if it is $4? What's your reaction? Don't come to school, right? Tomorrow Saturday anyway. Drive home again. No. No. It consolidates your trip. Have you heard about that? Don't just go there and buy a loaf of bread and come back. Please. If you're going, you might as well buy the whole week or buy 2 weeks of supply. Consolidate it. See, I'm like that. I only go to Lumberton like once a week, if at all. Whereas my husband is like, oh yeah, I need to do. You go. It's like 20 minutes, you know. So who has a V6 engine? If you have 4-cylinder, you save a little bit. If you have V6 or V8 engine, right? You will want to consolidate your trip a little bit. So inflation is quite real. So how do we solve this problem in macroeconomics? That's when this concept comes in. So what we calculated a while ago is known as nominal GDP. This is a measure of GDP in which the quantities produced are valued at current year prices. 2013 prices, 2009 prices, as is. Nominal GDP measures the current dollar value of production. You should have this definition in your book because this is a very important concept. On page 55, see it on the side? Okay, on the other hand, what is real GDP? Real GDP is the measure of GDP in which quantity produced are valued at the price in the base year. Keyword. Rather than at current prices. Real GDP measures the actual physical volume of production. So next what we're going to do is we're going to look at example of how to calculate a real GDP instead of nominal GDP. We have already done nominal GDP. Whatever we calculated just now, right? The 175, 420, all these are nominal GDP. Because you value it at the 2009 prices, you value it at 2013 prices. Okay, so, but first of all, I need to define what exactly is a base year. So what do you think? You think it's got anything to do with baseball? Probably not. What exactly is a base year? I'm going to give you my definition because I like to give layman definition that's easy for you to remember. Okay, any year that is free from any economic disturbances. My definition of economic disturbances will be, example will be high unemployment, That's my short form for unemployment or high inflation. So this is not a good year to use, like you won't want to use September 11, which happened on 2001, to be your base year. You want a year that's free from all these economic problems. You will not want to pick 2007 because that's the beginning of the so-called Great Recession. You want to pick a good year. Let's see what other good year. 1984, second term of President Reagan, that was good. 1986 was a good year. Okay, so that's what they do. Okay, so look at the keywords here. The current dollar value of production is pertain to nominal GDP. Whereas with real GDP, we look at the physical volume of the production. So let's revise this calculation here. In this new calculation, we want to calculate what is real GDP. So, and assuming that you have to pick a year as a base year. So we pick 2009 to be the base year. Okay, now this is very important. Whatever year that you pick as a base year, in this case 2009, then the nominal and the real GDP would be the same. Okay, so in this case, 2009 real GDP is the same as what we calculated before 2009 nominal GDP. That is, you just take 10 times 10 plus 15 plus 5. So everything is the same, got 175. However, the second year where you base it off, which is 2013, where you base it off 2009, the base year. That's your current year. The real GDP would be, you take the number, the volume, the physical volume, 20 and 30. However, instead of using the 2013 prices, you use the base year prices for the respective good. So in this case, that would be 10, and that would be 5. And if you use this method, you get this number to be 350. So let's take 350 divided by 175. Guess what you got? Go ahead, use calculator. I won't be offended. Go ahead. 350 divided by 175 is?
2.
Exactly 2. So there it is. We took care of the problem. So there is not so-called overestimated GDP. So it's exactly right now. And in a lot of calculation today, we do that. Because inflation is very real. So what the inflation rate is like 20%, 10%, then whoa, you know, the overestimation would be pretty serious. So this is how we correct it, by introducing this real GDP method. And later on you will see that this not only applies to GDP, in fact it applies to any value. So write this down, this is important. Any values, I'm going to give you an example. For example, household income. Okay, example would be household income. Let's what else? Wages. Anything that has values to it. Hey, you could even add rent. Why not? Interest. Yes. So this is some of the things that we'll talk about later. But so for now, you need to know the difference between the two. Okay, so if you look at historically, this is the GDP or output of the U.S. or the production, overall production of the U.S. Everything, all sectors, education, healthcare, minerals, services, what have you. So from 1900 to all the way, oh, this is only 2004. Let's look at your book. We have a better diagram maybe. Oh yeah, if you look at page 57, everybody got your book? So yeah, we missed something here because this is only into 2004. So if you look at figure 4.2 here, you see a dip. What year was that? Towards the end. That was your, yes, go ahead.
2009? Or
Yeah, between 2007 and 2009. That's when the beginning of the Great Recession. So you see, this not captured yet because you're doing okay. We didn't know what that was coming. At least I didn't know when I started doing this PowerPoint. That was years ago. That was supposed to be updated. I don't know what happened. Yeah. Okay. So Now, you have seen how we use GDP to calculate production. So is GDP like everything? What does it tell you? There's one short-term disadvantage of using GDP. That is, it's not the same as economic well-being. For example, it does not capture leisure time. Like other countries like France, for example, they have shorter work week, like 42 hours per week instead of like, what is it now here? How many hours is it? Oh, 40, yeah. Okay, maybe they have 32 hours per week. It's not captured. Start work later, like some of you are going to college right now. You want to get a degree before you work, and that's not being captured. Some people want to retire early. In other words, the quality of life is not being calculated. It's not being included in GDP calculation. Non-market economy, household production, we talked about it, that doesn't have any market value, so we exclude it. Volunteer services like 9/11, what happened? Everything okay? Or is it anything wrong? Everything is fine. Okay. Okay, household production, we talked about volunteer services like September 11, what happened? You got volunteer service, the firemen, firefighters. They were at ground zero helping out, pulling out the bodies, from the debris, everything. So, do you think they get paid? No. It's a volunteer service. We didn't count this. But this was like hours and hours of work day. Non-market activities are more important in poor countries. Countries like India, for example, they're doing so well, emerging economy. In the streets of Calcutta, you see a lot of vendors, right, selling merchandise. That's a big part of the economy, but that's not captured. Underground economy could be legal or illegal. Legal will be like your Uncle Bob comes by and fix your plumbing and you give him a token, so that's not any value transacted. How many of you watch TV that people do this drug transaction? They carry this aluminum briefcase with lots of money inside. When you open it, it's scary. Look at this money that creeps, $1,000 per piece. So what if they have this kind of transaction? At the end of the transaction, you wouldn't dare to say like, would you issue me a receipt? What happened? Next thing is bang, your history, right? You don't ask for receipt because illegal transaction. You don't want to get involved with that. All right, so that's not being captured in GDP, of course. What do you think? Okay, environmental quality and resource depletion. That's also not being captured, and we think it should be. Because in North Carolina, you have a lot of open space. In this county, you have a lot of, farmland, but in New York City, you won't get it. So what if the GDP is higher, but they have a lot of traffic congestion, they have a lot of high crime rate? Well, although Robeson County has one of the highest crime rate too in North Carolina. Okay, and lastly, GDP does not capture the effects of income inequality. Okay, your homework problem, that's the end of my lectures. So before I give it to you, I want to go over it very quickly. So all the questions involve supply curve. So what you have to do is you have to shift supply curve